The cold doesn't arrive with a sound. It doesn't knock on the door. There is no warning. It simply reaches your skin in silence, like a thin, dry, emotionless hand resting lightly on your wrist, then slowly sliding up your arm, lingering there just a little longer than a single breath. You inhale. The air moves deep into your lungs, dry, cold, unmistakably real. When you exhale, warmth leaves your body as a faint mist. It appears in front of you, hanging briefly in the air, then disappears without leaving a trace. Every breath has a shape. Every exhale reminds you of one simple thing: you are here. Around you, the prairie stretches outward. No borders, no sharp lines. Land and sky dissolve into darkness. There are no lights, no sounds of the modern world, only silence. A silence large enough for you to hear your own heartbeat, and deep enough for your thoughts to begin slowing down. You don't need to do anything. No moving, no preparing. Just stand still and let the night slowly close in around you. In this place, time does not rush. There is no schedule. Nothing waiting for your immediate response. Only a cold night arriving very slowly. If you are listening to this after a long day, when your shoulders are heavy, when your mind has carried too many sounds, allow yourself to stop here. You don't need to understand anything. You don't need to remember anything. Just listen and let your body find its own rhythm of rest again. And if these slow historical stories bring you even a small sense of peace before sleep, gently press like, share this with someone who may also need a quiet night, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue these silent journeys together, where people slow down and time is no longer in a hurry. Now we can leave the modern world behind. You are standing in a cold night of the late 19th century American frontier, not in a book, not in hurried imagination, but in a very specific moment. When the cold begins to sink deeper into the body, you feel it most clearly in the places that do not move, in the hands hanging loosely at your sides, in the ankles resting still against frozen ground, in your back where warmth escapes fastest when the wind passes over. The wind is not strong, it does not howl. It is just enough to carry the scent of dry grass, the smell of earth that has long since lost its heat, and the familiar roughness of the prairie at night. Nothing is happening, and that is intentional. This is not yet the moment for action, not the moment for story, only the moment for presence. At this point in history, countless people have stood in the cold just like this. They did not call it harsh. They did not call it a challenge. They simply called it night. Night is when everything slows. Night is when people no longer need to appear strong. Night is when the body is allowed to admit its own tiredness. You may feel alone in the vast space, but in truth you are standing alongside many generations who once stood the same way. They breathed in this same cold air. They exhaled the same thin mist. They stood still, letting the night cover them little by little. No one tried to defeat the cold. No one thought about conquering nature. Here people only learned how to live with it. That acceptance was never loud. It was quiet. And it is that quiet that brings a sense of safety. Your body begins to change very slowly. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw loosens. Your breathing grows longer, steadier. The cold is still there, but it no longer demands all of your attention. It becomes part of the space, like the darkness, like the sky, like the ground beneath your feet. Time here is not measured by clocks. It is measured by breath, by the settling of the body, by the feeling that there is nothing that needs to be rushed. You do not need much to make it through the night, only to know where you are, and to know that somewhere nearby there will be a place for you to lie down. From this faint sense of vulnerability we will continue, even more slowly, towards something people long ago understood instinctively, that humans are smaller than nature, and that this acknowledgement itself is the first step toward peace. The cold does not stop at the skin. After a while, you begin to realize it has gone deeper, through the layers of clothing, through the breath, into the body itself. Not suddenly. There is no clear moment when you can say, now it's cold. It simply becomes present gradually, like groundwater moving quietly beneath the surface of the earth. You feel it in your back, where the spine is exposed to the air longer than usual, in the tiny gaps between layers of fabric where warmth does not linger. Your hands do not hurt. They are just a little slower. Small movements are no longer as quick as they were during the day. Your body is speaking to you, very softly, reminding you that energy is not unlimited. In this place, no one blames the body for that. No one demands that it be stronger. People simply listen. You remain still a little longer, and within that stillness a very simple awareness appears. Not fear, not worry, just a gentle truth: humans are more fragile than nature. Not in a pessimistic way, not in a helpless way, just smaller. The wind does not need to know your name. The ground does not adjust its temperature for you. The sky does not change its rhythm to fit human schedules. And strangely enough, realizing this does not make you tense, it makes you lighter. You do not need to prove anything here. You do not need to appear tough. You do not need to win. The cold continues, doing what it does. But you no longer see it as something to defeat. You simply acknowledge, I am inside it. That acknowledgement is quiet. There is no resistance, no rushing thoughts, just the body, adjusting on its own, learning what to keep and letting go of what is unnecessary. In the modern world, we are used to avoiding this feeling. We turn on heaters, close doors, adjust temperatures to our preference. But here, between night and open land, there is no such distance. You are not protected from nature. You are inside it. And that somehow makes you more aware of your own existence. Each breath becomes important, not because it is rare, but because you begin to feel it fully. You are no longer breathing unconsciously. You inhale, and you know you are inhaling. You exhale, and you watch warmth leave your body, dissolving into the cold night, like a very small greeting to the world around you. In that moment, you are no longer the center, and that feels comfortable. You are simply a human standing inside a very large night. The cold does not erase you. It only places you exactly where you belong. Your body continues to change. Muscles soften, shoulders lower slightly. Breathing grows longer, not because you are warmer, but because you have stopped fighting the cold. This fragility is not weakness. It is the beginning of adaptation. When you know you are not stronger than the night, you stop wasting energy trying to be. You begin to conserve. You conserve movement. You conserve thought. You even conserve unnecessary emotion. Somewhere deep in human memory, many people reached this understanding long before you. They did not name it. They did not write it down. They simply lived with it, through cold nights, through long seasons. And then, very naturally, once you have acknowledged your own fragility, another question appears. Not in the mind, but in the body. So, how do you rest in a world like this? Not how to be comfortable, not how to be completely warm, just this: how to be safe enough, calm enough to lie down. From that very gentle awareness, the story continues, not through hurried action, but through practical, deeply human choices. The people of this cold night carry very little. They bring only what is essential to be able to sleep. And from there we step into the night of a cowboy, where sleep is not comfort, but a natural part of the journey of living. When you stand long enough in the cold night, and you have already acknowledged your own fragility, something else slowly becomes clear. You are not the first person to be here. The place where you are standing was once a familiar path for people living in the late 19th century, when the American frontier was still wide open, when borders were uncertain, and when the night sky served as a shared roof for many lives. This is the night of a cowboy, not the romantic image from paintings, not the hero of loud, dramatic stories, just a man living on the trail drive, guiding cattle across long stretches of land where each day ends with an evening that feels very much like the one before it. A cowboy does not have a home in the usual sense, no walls to lean against, no porch to block the wind. His home is wherever night falls, any patch of ground dry enough, the sky above him and the cold earth beneath his back. For a cowboy, sleeping out on open land is not unusual. It is not a challenge. It is simply part of the rhythm of life. Day after day they wake with the first light, move with the rhythm of the herd, and when the sun sets, they know the night will come. Wherever they are, whether they are ready or not, night does not arrive with surprise. It comes steadily like an old acquaintance. You can imagine that rhythm. Not fast, not rushed. Everything follows a clear sequence, repeated so often that it no longer requires much thought. As darkness settles in, the cowboy does not ask, "Where will I sleep tonight?" He looks at the ground. He watches the wind. He sees the cattle beginning to slow. Those signs are enough to know how the night will pass. At this point in history, no one expects comfort. No one searches for convenience. Sleep is not for enjoyment. Sleep is simply so the body can move into the next day. And because of that, the cowboy's night carries a very different quality from the modern night. There is no sharp separation between day and night. There is only a continuous rhythm of living, with sleep woven quietly into the journey. You begin to sense that this night is not special. It does not need to be remembered. It does not need to become a grand story. It is simply another night among many nights just like it, and it is precisely that repetition that creates a feeling of safety. When everything is familiar, the body does not need to stay on high alert. The mind does not need to tighten. The cowboy understands this deeply, even if he never puts words to it. He does not think much about the night. He does not analyze the cold. He does not ask questions about meaning. He simply knows that the night will pass, just as countless nights have passed before. In that understanding, you can feel a deep calm, not because life is easy, but because hardship has become familiar. When hardship is no longer new, it no longer frightens you. You do not need to be stronger than it. You only need to know how to be with it. The cowboy's night, then, is not a night of loneliness. It is a night of continuation. The cattle are there. The land is there. The sky is there. And the human is only a small part of that larger picture. You stand within this night and realize that history is not always shaped by great moments. Sometimes history is simply a series of similar nights, lived through quietly. And when the night becomes familiar, when the cold no longer surprises you, something very practical begins to emerge. Not a question of meaning, but a question of how to make it through the night. Not through strength, not through willpower, but through very specific, very simple things, small items a cowboy carries with him. Among them, there is one thing more important than all the rest. Something not meant for fighting, not meant for moving, but to lie down. And from here, once the night has become familiar, once history has been anchored to one very real human being, we move forward to look more closely at the only home a cowboy carries with him throughout the journey. When the night has become familiar and the cold no longer surprises you, the cowboy does not look for anything new. He reaches for something very old, not large, not complex, not named with any formal or elegant words. Just the bedroll. Out here, the bedroll is not an accessory. It is not something you bring if there's room. It is the one thing kept until the very end, when everything else can be left behind. For a cowboy, the bedroll is survival in its quietest form. There is no bed, no roof, no wall to lean against, only a rolled bundle of fabric, tied neatly behind the saddle, traveling with him through every long day. You can picture it clearly. The outer layer is canvas, thick, rough, strong enough to block the wind and keep the cold ground outside. Inside is wool, heavy, not soft in a modern way, but faithful in its ability to hold warmth. Nothing extra, no decoration. Everything serves one purpose, to create a space just small enough for the body to rest. When you look at a bedroll, you do not see comfort. You see understanding. An understanding that every night is cold, that the ground always draws heat away, that humans do not need much, only what is right. For a cowboy, the bedroll is not just a place to sleep, it is home. Not because it is fixed, but because it is familiar. Wherever it is laid out, on dry grass, on hard earth beside the cattle, or under an open sky, the bedroll is always the same scent of fabric holding smoke, the same familiar weight settling over the body, the same sequence repeated night after night. And it is this repetition that creates a sense of safety deeper than any shelter. Carrying your home behind a saddle is not romantic, it is practical. When you do not know where you will sleep tonight, you do not build a house, you carry one. Not large, not perfect, just enough for one human being. Here, the idea of home is not tied to a location. It is tied to a feeling. The feeling when the roll is spread out. The feeling when the wool touches the body. The feeling that says, I have reached a place where I can stop. For a cowboy, the bedroll is the only thing that does not change across long days. The cattle change. The weather changes. The land changes. But the bedroll does not. It is the single point of stability in a life defined by movement. And within that small stability, the body learns how to let go. No thinking required, no analysis, only memory. Spread it out, lie down, pull the cover over yourself. These movements do not require awareness. They have been repeated too many times. You begin to understand why the bedroll carries such quiet emotional weight. Not because it is the warmest, not because it is the softest, but because it allows a human being to remain in something familiar no matter how much the world around them changes. In the modern world, we often tie the idea of home to size, to comfort, to possessions. But here, home only needs to be small enough to hold a tired body. The bedroll does not promise deep sleep. It only promises that you have a place to lie down, and sometimes that is all the body needs. When the night is long, when the cold is still there, when nature does not change for you, knowing that you have a home like this is a very quiet comfort. You do not need to defeat the night. You only need a place to be with it. And when the bedroll is taken down from the saddle, when it is placed on the cold ground, another phase of the night begins. Not thought, not philosophy, but very small sounds, fabric touching earth, straps being loosened, and the blanket about to be opened. When the bedroll is placed on the ground, the night seems to settle just a little more. There are no words, no clear thoughts that need to surface, only familiar movements carried out almost entirely by the memory of the body. You bend down. Your hand touches the outer layer of fabric. The canvas is cold, not biting cold, just a dry, stiff cold that has been exposed to the open air all day long. As you pull gently, the fabric rubs against itself, releasing a very small sound. Indistinct, not sharp, just enough to confirm that something is being opened. That sound does not wake the night. It blends into the wind, blends into the silence. As if the night has known sounds like this for a very long time. You keep opening it. Each layer unfolds slowly. The first scent that appears is not the smell of the night, but the smell of days that came before. Dry dust, old fire smoke, long cooled, and the scent of horse sweat. Warm, heavy, familiar. Nothing pleasant by modern standards, but nothing unfamiliar. It is the smell of the journey, the smell of repeated days, the smell of a life that is never separated from body and earth. You inhale, very lightly. Not to smell, just to let it pass. These scents do not need to be analyzed. They carry no information. They simply remind the body, this is a place I have been before. Your hand keeps moving, touching the wool layer inside. The wool is heavy, not soft, not airy. It holds the cold of the night air for the first few moments. When your hand rests on it, the chill moves back into the skin. Slow, steady, unhurried. There is no instinct to pull your hand away. You are used to this. Your body knows that this initial cold will pass, that warmth will return once everything has been placed where it belongs. You spread the bedroll a little farther. Fabric meets ground. The ground does not respond. It simply exists, cold, hard, silent. Between the fabric and the earth there is no negotiation, only contact. Every movement now is slow, not because of exhaustion, but because there is no reason to be faster. Pull, release, smooth it out. These movements require no thought. They are repeated every night, and it is this repetition that calms the mind. Each time you open the bedroll, you are not only unrolling fabric, you are recreating a familiar sequence, one the body recognizes, before the mind even has time to join in. The sound of fabric continues, very soft, very even. No metal clatter, no sharp noise, only cloth and night slowing down together. You can feel the cold beginning to rise from the ground. It does not attack, it simply spreads. It enters through points of contact, knees, palms, the backs of your hands. The body does not tense. It only notices. Here, every sensation is allowed to exist without needing an immediate response. The old smell of smoke clinging to the fabric fades. It blends into the air like a distant memory. The scent of horse sweat does the same. Not strong, just enough to create familiarity. These smells do not wake you. They do not stimulate. They simply confirm that this life has happened and is still happening. When the bedroll is fully opened, there is no moment of victory, no feeling of completion, only a space that has been prepared, a space just large enough for one body. You do not lie down right away. There is no need to hurry. You stand there a little longer. Let your hands rest. Let your shoulders drop. The night does not change. The cold is still there, but something is different. Between you and the frozen ground there is now a thin layer of separation, not enough to erase the cold, but enough to say, I am not lying directly on it. And sometimes that is enough. When the final movements are done, when the bedroll lies still on the ground, your body begins preparing for the next step. Not through thought, but through sensation. The sense that now you may choose how to place yourself down. But before you lie down, before the weight of your body meets the ground, there is one very important thing to understand more clearly. Not the wind, not the night, but what lies directly beneath this layer of fabric, because the thing that holds the cold the longest is not the air, but the ground. When the bedroll has been opened, when the fabric lies still against the earth, you begin to notice something important. The cold does not come only from the wind. Wind can pass by. Wind can change direction. Wind can grow stronger then fade away. But the ground does not move. It stays there, silent, patient. You lower one knee, then your hand, finally your back, the part of your body that remains in contact with the world below the longest. The first sensation is not pain, just a coolness, spreading slowly. Unlike the wind which touches the skin and moves on the cold from the ground stays. It does not ask, it does not announce itself. It simply begins little by little to draw warmth away. You may not notice it right away, but your body does. The spine, where much of your heat is held, begins to feel heavier, not because of weight but because warmth is leaving it bit by bit. Cold ground does not need to be forceful. It only needs patience. Here the cowboy learns an important lesson very early. Not from books, not from instruction, but from nights spent unable to rest. Wind can make you shiver, but the ground is what truly drains your heat. You begin to understand why all preparation revolves around separating the body from the earth, not to stay clean, not for comfort, but to preserve the most valuable thing of all, warmth. When your back rests on the bedroll, the difference becomes clear. The layer of wool between you and the ground does not make you warm instantly, but it slows the loss. And sometimes slowing it down is enough. Out here, survival is not about creating more. It is about holding on to warmth, holding on to energy, holding on to a steady breath. The cowboy does not call this strategy. He simply calls it knowing how to lie down, knowing how to lie so your back does not touch the ground directly, knowing how to lie so the spine is shielded, knowing how to lie so the body does not have to fight all night. These understandings do not come from a single night. They come from many repeated nights. Night after night, the body learns what causes heat to escape faster and what helps it stay longer. You lie still for a while. No movement, no adjustment, just letting the body recognize the coldest points. The back, the hips, the shoulders. The ground is there, always there, and you begin to understand why the ground is called the enemy, not because it is cruel, but because it does not change for you. The ground does not care whether you are tired. It does not adjust its temperature. It simply does what it does. And humans, if they want to make it through the night, must learn to adapt, not to fight, not to complain, just to observe and adjust. This is where practical knowledge begins to form. Not through words, not through concepts, but through very real sensations in the back and along the spine. You do not need to understand physics to know that lying directly on the ground will make you colder faster. You only need to lie there. Long ago, people passed this knowledge down not through books but through habit, through the way a bedroll was spread, through how a sleeping spot was chosen, through brief everyday reminders. And as you lie still in the night, you begin to sense something deeper. The intelligence of survival does not live in grand ideas. It lives in paying attention to the quietest things, like the ground. Once you understand this, your body begins to work differently. No panic, no tension, just very small adjustments, very gentle ones. A slight shift, a little lift, a bit more distance from the earth. Tiny changes, but enough to transform the entire night. You do not need to think any further. Your body already knows, and once it knows, it begins to relax. Breathing grows longer. The chest settles, the shoulders release, not because the night has grown warmer, but because you are no longer fighting the real enemy. You have identified it, and you know how to live with it. In that quiet, while the ground remains cold, while the night remains long, a very natural next step appears. Not a thought, but an act of observation. Observing the surroundings, observing the terrain, observing where the earth draws less heat and where it draws more. And from here, the cowboy begins to do something not everyone notices. He chooses where to sleep. Once you understand that the ground is what holds the cold the longest, your body no longer lies down at random. It begins to observe. Not through clear thought, not through calculation, Just through a slow, natural attention, you stand up, not in a hurry. You lift yourself slightly away from the bedroll just enough to look around. The night is still there. The cold has not changed, but the way you exist within the night is different now. A cowboy never chooses a sleeping spot carelessly, not because he is more cautious than others, but because his body has learned what happens when the wrong place is chosen. Low ground, places where the land dips, often looks calm, less wind, flatter surface, but that is where the cold settles. Moisture collects there. The air grows heavier. Heat leaves the body faster. You do not need to touch it to know. You only need to stand still for a moment. In low ground, your breath becomes more visible, not because you are breathing harder, but because the air is colder. A cowboy avoids such places naturally without thought. He simply keeps walking. He moves slightly higher. Not a hill, not a steep rise, just ground lifted enough to let water drain away enough for the wind to pass through instead of settling. There the earth is drier. The air is lighter. The cold does not cling so tightly to the body. You stand there and notice a very small difference. Not warmth, just less cold. Differences like these are easy to miss if you are in a hurry, but a cowboy is never in a hurry. Life on a trail drive has taught him that every small detail stretches across the entire night. You bend down, you touch the grass with your hand. Grass pressed flat against the ground often holds moisture. Grass that stands sparse and dry is a good sign. No theory needed. No explanation required. Just repeated observation across many nights. You notice the wind, not with your eyes but with your skin, the direction it touches your face, whether it moves steadily or in short bursts, whether it flows past or circles back. Where the wind swirls, cold air tends to linger. Where the wind passes through the night, moves more easily. The cowboy stands there, shoulders slightly angled, head gently lowered, simply feeling. No wasted motion, no hurried gesture. Choosing a place to sleep is a quiet kind of work. You may not realize you are working, but your body does. A few steps forward. Stop. Feel. Repeat. And it is this repetition that begins to calm the mind. No new questions. No new information. Just the same sequence of actions, repeated each evening. This has a deep effect on the human body. When things are familiar, the brain does not need to stay alert. When the brain is not alert, it begins to relax. A cowboy never calls this an art. He never names it. But from the outside, it is exactly that. A subtle art. The art of living slowly enough to notice what makes the night easier. You find a place. Not perfect. Just suitable. Not the lowest. Not the highest. Just enough. You place the bedroll there without further thought. Your body has already decided before you realize it. The movements that follow happen almost automatically. Unroll. Adjust slightly. Smooth it out. No hesitation. In this moment, choosing a sleeping spot is no longer a decision. It is a habit, and a habit repeated enough times becomes a lullaby. Every night, the cowboy does the same thing in the same order. No need to remember. No need to think. The body goes first. The mind follows. You begin to understand why people who lived close to nature could sleep in conditions that modern people find difficult. Not because they were stronger, not because they endured more, but because they did not resist. They observed, they adjusted, and they repeated. Within that repetition is a steady rhythm, the rhythm of bending down, of standing up, of stopping to feel. This rhythm does not excite, it does not stimulate, it guides the body back to a familiar state, preparing for rest. When you have chosen your sleeping place, there is no sense of victory, only a gentle reassurance. You know that tonight will be no different from the nights before, and it is precisely that sameness that makes the body feel safe. You return to the bedroll. Slowly, there is no need to look around anymore. Everything is where it should be. The cold is still there, the ground is still cold, the wind still moves, but you have done everything that needs to be done. Now the night can continue in its own way. And you, having chosen a place that fits, begin to think of something else. Not the ground, not the wind, but fire. Not to add warmth, but to decide whether tonight needs a trace of light, or whether darkness can be allowed to settle completely. When the sleeping place has been chosen, when the bedroll rests quietly on dry ground, when your body begins to loosen after familiar movements, one final element of the night remains: fire. Fire does not need to be sought. It has been there already as a natural part of the evening. a small glow burning slowly, not flaring up, just enough to reveal the soft outlines of the night. Fire carries warmth, not a great warmth, just a gentle comfort enough to soften, stiff hands enough to ease the air around you slightly. You look into the fire, not intently, not with thought. The flame shifts, pulls inward, then stretches out again, responding softly to small currents of wind you cannot see. Out here, fire is always a comfort. It reminds people that they are not completely swallowed by darkness, that there is still a small point of light within the vast, cold space. But the cowboy understands something else as well. Fire does not only bring warmth, it brings attention. The light of the fire does not stop where it burns. It spreads outward, casting long shadows across the ground, touching objects that stand still in the night. For people, that light feels familiar. But for cattle, sudden light in darkness is unnatural. Cattle are accustomed to the dark. They move by habit, by the rhythm of one another's breathing, by the quiet sounds within the herd. A fire that burns brighter than usual can startle them. A human figure moving near the light can unsettle the entire herd. The cowboy has seen this happen before. It does not need retelling. It only needs remembering. When cattle panic, the night loses its calm, not because of great danger, but because disorder spreads faster than the cold. And so fire, the thing that offers comfort, also carries risk. You sit still. You do not add more wood. You do not stir the flames. You simply watch. The fire grows smaller, not all at once. It slowly lowers itself as if adjusting its own breathing. The light softens. The long shadows on the ground fade. The night begins to reclaim its space. In this moment, no grand decision is announced. There is no clear thought of should or should not. The cowboy does not ask, "Is fire necessary?" He asks only through a familiar sensation. Is it enough? Warm enough for the hands, bright enough to finish arranging things, enough for the night to enter a quieter phase? And the answer is usually it is enough. You let the fire burn down on its own. You do not extinguish it. You do not interfere. You simply stop feeding it. The fire does not resist. It does not flare one last time. It just slows, draws inward, and leaves behind small embers glowing softly. These embers no longer cast light far. They give off only a faint orange glow, just enough to confirm that fire was once here. The air darkens around you, not suddenly, but as if someone is slowly lowering a lamp. The darkness is not frightening. It is familiar. In the distance, the cattle begin to settle. Their sounds return to a steady rhythm, unhurried, uninterrupted. You hear their breathing, the soft touch of hooves on earth, the quiet shifting you know so well. In the darkness, these sounds become clearer. Fire was once the center of the evening. Now it retreats, and as the fire retreats, something else happens. Your ears open, not in a physical sense, but in a natural one. As the light fades, the body no longer relies on sight. It begins to rely on listening. You are not trying to listen. You simply hear. Wind in the distance, the herd nearby. The space between them grows denser. Choosing to let the fire fade is not a rejection of comfort. It is a transition. From direct warmth to wider safety. From light to rhythm. The cowboy understands this not through reasoning, but through many nights that pass this way. Fire helps begin the night, but it does not help end it. To sleep, the night must be allowed to be itself. You lean toward the bedroll. You do not lie down just yet. You simply change your position. The firelight is now only a faint memory, not enough to keep the eyes open, not enough to pull the mind outward. Your body feels a quiet, unexpected reassurance, not because it is warmer, but because everything around you has settled. The night has found its rhythm. The cattle have found theirs. And you, after letting the fire fade, are ready to move into the next rhythm as well, a rhythm that does not require light, a rhythm that needs only sound. And when the darkness has grown thick enough, when the fire is nothing more than distant embers, you realize that the night does not need to be seen. It needs to be listened to. When the fire finally goes out, the darkness does not rush in. It arrives very slowly. There is no clear moment when you can say, now it is dark. The light simply fades, then fades a little more until your eyes no longer have anything left to do. In that transition, the body begins to change. You stop looking. You begin listening. At first, your ears are still busy. They search for familiar sounds, the way your eyes once searched for the fire. But then, when there is nothing left to compare, listening grows deeper. You hear the wind, Not a strong wind, just a very light current moving across the open prairie. The sound is indistinct, like a breath brushing the ear before dissolving. The darkness at this point is no longer empty. It grows thicker. Not in a frightening way, but in a wrapping one, like a large blanket being drawn up, slowly covering everything. You do not need to close your eyes. Your eyes have already rested. In the dark, every movement becomes more meaningful. A very small shift from the distant herd carries more clearly than it did during the day. The touch of hooves against earth, a soft breath released, sounds that are steady, unhurried, ordinary. Your ears recognize this before your thoughts do. The cattle are calm. And when the herd is calm, the night is calm. You begin to hear the rhythm of darkness. Not a fast rhythm, not one measured by clocks, but the rhythm of things that have lived together for a long time. The wind moves through. The earth remains. The cattle breathe. And you lie among all of it. The darkness is no longer an empty space. It becomes a vast room without walls, without a ceiling, but deeply familiar. You do not feel abandoned inside it. On the contrary, you feel placed exactly where you belong. You do not need to see the sky to know it is there. You do not need to see the ground to know it is still beneath your back. Everything exists without needing confirmation from the eyes. Your ears become the primary sense now, but they do not work with tension. They simply open. You are not trying to separate each sound. You let them pass. Sounds nearby, sounds far away. None of them require a response. And that is what allows your body to feel safe. In the modern world, we are rarely in complete darkness. There is always a small light, always a screen, always something to look at. But here the darkness asks nothing. It does not demand attention. It does not stimulate. It simply exists, and in that existence your body begins to release. Your shoulders drop slightly. Your breath lengthens. Your chest loosens. Not because you are trying to relax, but because there is no longer any reason to stay tense. The night is no longer something you face. It is something you are inside. You no longer feel like you are listening to a story. You are within it. Darkness brings everything closer, not through distance, but through attention. A small sound is enough for you to notice, but not enough to wake you fully. These are the kinds of sounds that exist only when everything is safe. Your ears are not searching for danger. They are simply registering steadiness. Wind, cattle, the space between them. Those spaces matter more than the sounds themselves. They tell the mind that nothing needs to be filled. And when nothing needs to be filled, the mind begins to rest. Darkness becomes familiar, no longer mysterious, no longer strange. It is like an old companion who comes to sit beside you, saying nothing, simply being there. You do not need to respond. You do not need to react. You only need to remain. And when you remain long enough, you begin to realize that night does not need light in order to be understood. It needs listening. This listening requires no effort. It happens naturally once everything else has grown quiet. In the thickening dark, when your ears have settled into the rhythm of the night, another sound slowly becomes clearer. Not loud, not distinct, but steady. It is the sound of an entire herd existing together through the cold night, breathing, shifting, living. And from that, listening, a very ancient melody begins to emerge. Not a song, not a call, but a natural lullaby, one that has carried humans into sleep long before lullabies ever had words. In darkness thick enough now, when the fire has become only a distant memory, your ears stop searching for anything new. They simply open. Not wide, not tense, just opening in the natural way that happens when the eyes have rested, when the body no longer needs to see. And then from the quiet foundation of the night, a familiar layer of sound begins to rise. Not immediately clear, with no clear beginning. It is simply already there. You hear breathing. Not a single breath, but many breaths happening at once, overlapping, dissolving into one another. Inhale, exhale. Not synchronized, not following a fixed rhythm, and yet somehow not chaotic. Between those breaths you hear hooves touching the ground, a dry, low sound, then another farther away. Not footsteps, just adjustment. One animal shifts its weight to stand more comfortably. Another turns its head slightly. One lowers itself, then becomes still again. These sounds do not need names. They carry no message. They confirm only one thing: the herd is resting. And in the cowboy's world, that matters more than any light. You do not need to open your eyes to check. You do not need to look toward the herd. Your ears have already told you. The sound of cattle is not like music. It has no melody, but it has rhythm. The rhythm of ongoing existence. The rhythm of large bodies holding balance together through the night. That rhythm does not change suddenly. It does not speed up. It does not stop. It simply continues. And it is that continuation that allows your body to feel safe. You lie still. No adjustment. No movement. The sound enters your ears without resistance. You do not try to hear each detail. You do not separate one animal from another. You listen to the whole herd, the whole night, the whole space. There are pauses between the sounds. These pauses are not complete silence. They are like resting beats in a very long lullaby. Those rests are just as important as the sounds themselves. They tell the mind that nothing is approaching, nothing needs a response. In those resting spaces, your thoughts find nothing to hold on to. They try to appear, then drift away like thin clouds dissolving into darkness. Your breathing begins to slow. Not because you are trying to slow it, not because you remember to breathe calmly, but because the rhythm outside you is already slow. You inhale as a distant sound fades. You exhale as a soft shift reaches your ears. No one directs this. No one instructs it. This is synchronization that happens naturally when humans live close enough to nature. In the modern world, we rarely hear sounds that remain steady for hours. Machines interrupt. Traffic surprises. But the sound of a herd is different. It does not arrive to signal anything. It does not demand attention. It is simply there, and it stays. You begin to feel the weight of your body being held by the ground. Not rigidly, but in a real, honest way. Your back rests into the bedroll. Your shoulders drop a little more. Your jaw no longer holds tight. The sound continues. A slow breath released. A hoof touching earth. Then quiet. Then another sound. There is no precise beat, but nothing breaks the steadiness. You do not need to remember where you are. You do not need to remember what you are hearing. Your ears are working for you now, and when the ears have worked long enough, the mind begins to believe that everything is fine. In the cowboy's world, the herd is the measure of the night. No clock, no calendar. When the herd is calm, the night is unfolding as it should. The cowboy learned this through many nights of poor sleep, through many times waking suddenly because of a sound that did not belong. But tonight nothing is out of place. The sounds do not rise. They do not rush. They do not sharpen. They are rounded, soft and deep. You begin to lose the ability to tell breath from movement. Everything blends into a dense layer of sound. That layer does not wake you. It holds you here in this moment, here in the night. At times the sound almost disappears, leaving only a faint sense that it continues somewhere farther away, and in those moments your body relaxes a little more. Not completely, just a bit further. This feeling is not deep sleep. It is closer to being lulled, without anyone singing. The sound of the herd does not tell a story. It does not carry you elsewhere. It keeps you here, between humans and other living beings moving through the cold night together. In that quiet connection you no longer feel alone. Not because someone is beside you, but because life is around you, large, warm bodies breathing steadily. And that steadiness spreads to you. Your breath no longer draws attention. It finds its own rhythm, not fast, not slow, just enough to continue. Somewhere within the repeating sounds, within the safe pauses, your body begins to look for a more familiar point of support, not through thought but through sensation. Your neck wants a slight lift. Your head needs something firm, stable, not for comfort but to preserve warmth and balance. The sound of the herd continues behind you, like a foundation that never disappears. And upon that foundation, a very small detail prepares to emerge. Not loudly, not suddenly, just a familiar object being drawn closer in the dark. Something that has accompanied the cowboy through the long day. Something not soft, not warm, but deeply reliable. And as you prepare to rest your head as the herd's sound remains steady, you know that it is time to rest in the way people long ago have rested for generations. When the sound of the herd has become a steady background, when the darkness is thick enough that nothing needs to be seen anymore, your body begins to look for one very specific point of support. Not a blanket, not the ground, but the saddle. You pull it closer. No light is needed. Your hands have known its shape for a long time. The saddle is hard, cold. Nothing about it is soft in the way modern people expect. When your hand touches the dried leather, the cold travels clearly into your skin. Not sharp, just firm, like a reminder that this object has been out in the open all day. You do not hesitate. You do not weigh options. A cowboy does not search for comfort. He searches for what is right. You place the saddle beside the bedroll. Turn it slightly. Adjust it just enough so the right part lifts your neck and head away from the ground. The first sensation is not pleasant, but it is not unpleasant either. It is simply stable. When your neck is raised just a little, your breath moves into your lungs without being compressed by a flat position. Heat inside the body no longer drains straight into the ground. It stays a bit longer. Subtle, but enough for the body to register the difference. The saddle does not make you warmer. It does not promise softness, but it keeps you from losing heat too quickly. And for a cowboy, that matters more than any comfort. You lower your head. Your weight settles lightly onto the saddle. There is no sound, no unnecessary movement. Everything happens slowly, as if the body already knows exactly what to do. Out here, practicality always comes before sensation. Not because people are harsh with themselves, but because they understand that the night lasts longer than comfort. The saddle, the thing that carried the cowboy through the long day, now continues its role into the night. By day it carried him across wide stretches of land. It bore weight. It took sun and wind. By night it becomes a pillow. Not soft, not warm, but faithful. Between human and horse there are few words, only trust built through days, repeated again and again. You know your horse is nearby. No need to look, no need to call. You hear its breathing blend into the herd. The saddle here is more than an object. It is a trace of that relationship. When you rest your head on it, you are not resting on a piece of hard leather. You are resting on the entire journey of the day. Long steps, slow hours of movement, very brief pauses. All of it is wrapped into this familiar shape. Your neck is held in the right position, not bent, not strained. Your jaw loosens. Your shoulders drop, not because you feel comfortable, but because your body no longer has to hold itself up. The sound of the herd remains steady behind you, unchanged. That steadiness reassures you that nothing unusual is happening. You do not need to keep watch. You do not need to stay alert. The saddle supports your head. The bedroll supports your back. The ground supports everything. This arrangement is not accidental. It is the result of many nights that have passed in exactly the same way. The cowboy does not think about it. He simply does it. And it is this absence of thought that allows the body to rest. In the modern world, we often search for things that are softer, more cushioned, more elaborate. But here, simple is enough. The saddle does not indulge the body. It supports it in the right place. And sometimes being supported in the right place matters more than being indulged. Your breath moves in and out without resistance. Not deeper, not shallower, just steady. The cold at your neck is still there, but it is not uncomfortable. It reminds you that you are inside the night, and that the night is unfolding as it should. You do not need to fall asleep immediately. There is no need to force it. You simply lie still in this familiar position. The sound of the herd, the darkness, the saddle beneath your head. Everything is enough. And when everything is enough, the body asks for nothing more. Somewhere, very close, your horse stands quietly. Its breath merges with the breath of the herd. Between human and horse there is no clear boundary in the night. Only shared existence through one more cold evening. And within that quiet bond, with your head supported, with your neck lifted just enough, another layer of protection begins to take effect. Not from the ground, not from the saddle, but from the heavy layers of fabric waiting to be pulled up, to wrap around your body, and to hold warmth a little longer. When your head has settled onto the saddle, when your neck is lifted, just enough for breath to move into your lungs without resistance. When the distant sound of the herd has become a steady background that no longer requires attention, body begins to reach for the last thing it needs. Not movement, not thought. Just a quiet, instinctive sense that it is time to close the day. Your hand touches the wool blanket. No hurry, no searching. It is already there, heavy, silent, as if it has been waiting for this moment. When you grasp its edge, you feel its weight immediately. Not a weight that burdens, but a deliberate weight. The weight of holding. Wool is not soft, not smooth, not woven to please the skin. It is woven to endure. The coarse fibers brush your fingertips, carrying memories of rain, of frost, of days that never fully dried. Out here, wool is trusted not because it is perfect, but because even when it is not, it still does its work. You pull the blanket up slowly. The fabric moves through the air with a faint sound, not enough to wake anyone, just enough to tell you that the day has truly ended. The wool covers your stomach, your chest, your shoulders. Its weight presses gently down, not trapping, not tightening, just enough for the body to understand that it no longer needs to hold itself together. In the modern world, we often fear heavy things. Fear pressure, fear being held, but ancient bodies understood the opposite. Even weight is a signal of safety. It tells the nervous system there is nothing you need to run from. There is nothing you need to react to. You do not feel warm right away. Wool does not do that. It does not create heat. It only keeps it, and that keeping happens slowly. At first the cold is still there, light, steady, but after a while you realize the cold is no longer moving deeper. It stops. The warmth of your body no longer escapes as quickly. It begins to circulate like water held inside a sealed clay vessel. Over the wool blanket you pull another layer. Animal hide, buffalo hide. When your hand touches the thick skin, the sensation is completely different. Not the roughness of woven fibers, but the firmness of a surface that once protected a large living being from wind, rain, and winter. The hide does not wrap around your body. It does not follow every curve. It lays over you like a low roof. When it is placed correctly, the space around you seems to shrink, not in a suffocating way, but in a safe one. The wind no longer touches you directly. Cold air no longer slides across your skin. You do not need to think about this. Your body knows. Buffalo hide carries a very specific smell. Not pleasant, not inviting. The scent of dry earth. The scent of skin shaped by time. The scent of a life that has ended in order to protect another. There is no romance in that smell. Only truth. People here do not try to separate themselves from nature. They accept what nature leaves behind and use it with quiet respect. When both the wool blanket and the hide are in place, the combined weight becomes more noticeable. Not heavy in a tiring way, but heavy in a grounding way. Your body no longer feels like it is lying in the vast open prairie. You are lying inside a small space clearly defined. A space just large enough for one human being. No more, no less. Warmth continues to build. Very slowly. Almost too slowly to notice step by step, but the body recognizes it in other ways. Your shoulders drop further. Your chest no longer rises sharply. Your breathing does not need to deepen. It does not need to be controlled. It simply becomes even. Somewhere far away the herd continues to breathe, but you no longer need to hear it clearly. That sound has done its work. Now weight and warmth take over. Within this enclosure, darkness is no longer an open expanse. It becomes the outermost layer separated by wool and hide. You no longer need to think about the night. Your body has been placed into conditions suitable for rest. There is no comfort, no luxury, only correct arrangement. Wool holds heat even when damp. Hide blocks wind and cold. The saddle supports the neck. The bedroll supports the back. Each thing does one job. Nothing overlaps. Nothing is wasted. This is where the intelligence of survival lives. Not in having more, but in having what is right. The warmth in your body does not increase, but it stabilizes. That is the most important signal. The body does not need to generate extra energy. It does not need to shiver. It does not need to tense. It can begin to shift into a different state. A state that is not fully asleep, not fully awake. A state humans have known for countless generations. In that state, the body begins to adapt to the remaining cold rather than fight it. There is no victory, no defeat, only alignment. You lie still. There is no need to turn. The weight of wool and hide keeps you gently in place in the position you are already in. That is what reassures the body most. And when every layer of protection has been set correctly, when warmth no longer escapes, when darkness has softened and moved farther away, a very quiet process begins inside you. No clear signal, no marked transition, only the heart slowing, muscles loosening, awareness drifting backward. The body is no longer preparing to sleep. It is learning how to remain in this condition, and from that remaining an ancient ability awakens the ability to adapt, not in a single night but minute by minute. With the blanket pulled up, The hide blocking the wind, warmth stabilized, your body begins to change, not from the outside, but from deep within. And that is the moment we move toward next. The moment when the body stops resisting and begins to live with the night. The cold is still there. It does not disappear. It does not retreat. It does not surrender. There is no moment in this night when the cold suddenly gives up. But something else has happened. Not outside you, but within. When the wool blanket has held the warmth, when the animal hide has blocked the wind, when familiar weight rests evenly across your body, you begin to realize that the cold is no longer moving deeper. It remains, but it no longer invades. Your body no longer responds by tightening, no shivering, no curling inward, just a faint presence at the edge of sensation. This is the first sign of adaptation. Your breathing no longer searches for warmer air. It moves in and out at a more natural rhythm, not deeper, not shallower, just steady. Your chest rises slowly, then falls as if the body has found a pace that is enough to carry it through the night. You do not need to think about breathing. You do not need to remind yourself to relax. Breath does this on its own when it is no longer pressured. At this stage, the body is no longer trying to fight the night. It accepts it. Not acceptance as resignation, but acceptance as an understanding of limits. The cold does not disappear, but it is no longer an enemy. It becomes a condition. And once the condition is accepted, the body begins to work differently. Small muscles in the shoulders, the back, the neck begin to loosen just a little more. Not completely, just enough that they no longer need to hold position. You do not feel each muscle releasing. There is no clear sensation. Only after a while you realize that you are no longer holding yourself together. The body lies there supported by wool, by hide, by earth. It no longer needs to support itself. A calm appears not as a strong emotion but very gently, like water after the wind has stopped blowing. Not perfectly still, just calm enough to reflect the night sky. In that calm your awareness does not vanish, it simply steps back. You can still hear the distant sound of the herd, but you are no longer tracking its rhythm. That sound is no longer an anchor. It becomes background, like the faint ticking of a clock in a familiar house. You know it is there, but you do not need to attend to it. Your body is now in a very ancient state, not fully asleep, not fully awake. A state humans knew long before soft beds and enclosed rooms. In this state, the brain reduces its analysis. Thoughts are no longer arranged. Stories are no longer connected. Fragmented images may appear, then dissolve before you can recognize them. There is no narrative, no logic, only light fragments drifting past like mist. You do not need to hold on to them. You do not need to understand them. The body is doing something more important. It is learning how to remain still in these conditions. Learning that it does not need to react to every small change in temperature. Learning that it does not need alertness in order to survive. This is adaptation that is not taught, not learned. It is carried through the body from long before words existed. People long ago did not name this state. They simply knew that after a while the body would get used to it. And once it did, the night became easier even though it was not warmer. You lie there and time begins to move differently. No minutes, no hours, only the slow continuation of breath. Inhale, exhale. Not deep, not shallow, just even. With each exhale, your body settles a little further into the surface, holding it. Not because you are more tired, but because you are no longer tense. The cold still touches your skin. Light, steady, but it no longer draws your attention. You do not think of yourself as being cold. You simply know that you are in the night, and that the night is unfolding as it should. This calm carries no joy, no sadness. It is neutral, and it is this neutrality that allows the mind to stop working. You do not need to sleep yet. There is no need to force it. The body is in exactly the stage that comes just before sleep, a very delicate stage where only a little more quiet is needed. At this stage, large movements no longer appear. If you shift, it will be very slow, very small, as if the body does not want to break the state it has reached. You notice different weights across your body, legs heavier, shoulders softer, neck held steady. Everything begins to separate from awareness, and in that separation something very natural begins to happen. Sleep does not arrive like a door closing. It arrives like a layer of fog slowly thickening. You do not know exactly when you will fall asleep, and that no longer matters. What matters is that the body has stopped resisting the night. It is no longer trying to get through it. It is staying with it. And when it stays long enough, when breathing has slowed, when thoughts have drifted far back, when the cold has become only a background condition, another state begins to form, a state where sleep is not complete but wakefulness is no longer present either, a state deeply familiar to people who slept outdoors for generations. And from this quiet adaptation, we move into a different kind of rest, sleeping while still listening. Sleep arrives, but it does not close the door. It opens only a narrow space, just enough for the body to step inside while leaving a small gap open to the outside world. You are not fully awake, not fully asleep either. It feels like drifting on calm water, not sinking completely, not floating completely. Your body has rested. It is no longer tense, no longer holding, but your ears remain open, not open in a searching way, not open in a state of high alert, just open enough to notice major changes if they occur. In this state, you do not hear individual sounds clearly. You hear the background. The sounds of the night become a soft mass without sharp edges. If the wind changes direction, you will know, but you will not startle. If the herd shifts, you will sense it, but you will not rise. This is a kind of listening that requires no decision. Your body has released all daytime duties. Muscles lie still. Breathing is steady. Yet somewhere very deep, a thin layer of awareness remains. Not to think, only to notice. This is a state very familiar to a cowboy. There is no luxury of deep, uninterrupted sleep. The open night does not allow it, but it allows a different kind of rest, a kind where the body recovers while the mind keeps a very fine thread connecting it to the surrounding world. You may dream, but the dreams have no clear shape, no storyline, no faces, only very light fragments arriving and leaving before you realize you were dreaming. If an image appears, it is misty. If a thought drifts through, it dissolves before becoming words. In this space between waking and sleep, time no longer moves in straight lines. You do not know how long you have been lying there. A minute and an hour can pass with the same feeling. Your ears remain open but relaxed, like a door that is not locked yet, not blown open by the wind, just resting slightly ajar. If something truly unusual happens, that door will open wider. If not, it stays as it is, calm. Your body occasionally makes very small adjustments, a slightly deeper breath, a gentle shift in the shoulders, not to wake up but to continue resting in a better position. This unfinished sleep is not a lack. It is a compromise that humans accepted long ago. Outdoors, safety does not come from losing consciousness completely. Safety comes from resting enough while remaining connected. You do not need to think about this. Your body knows. It has learned that it does not need to stay awake all night, but it should not sleep too deeply either. In this state, the brain does not process complexity. It does not plan. It does not revisit memories. Any worries that appear are not clear enough to keep you awake. They drift by like thin clouds across a night sky. Calm is not a strong emotion. It is the absence of any need to do something. You do not need to stand watch. You do not need to check. Your ears are already doing that for you. And because your ears remain open, your body can sink deeper without fear. This is a very cowboy state. Not romantic, not heroic, just practical. People who live outdoors understand that sleep is a process, not a switch. They enter sleep the way they enter night, in small steps without hurry. You lie there between wool blankets and animal hides, your head resting on the saddle, your ears listening to the background of the night. There is no clear boundary between stages, no moment of now I am asleep. There is only now it is quiet. Within that quiet, your body continues to recover. Heart rate slows, temperature stabilizes. There is no deep dreaming, but there is rest. No complete forgetting, but there is release. And this very incompleteness is what makes it durable. It allows you to remain with the night without being carried away by it. If the wind grows stronger, you will know. If the herd stirs, you will feel it. But if everything remains the same, you continue drifting, half awake, half asleep. No need to name it. Somewhere the night keeps moving. And you, in this ancient state of rest, do not need to follow it. You only need to remain. Then in the vague space between two breaths, there is a very small moment when your body knows the night is not finished yet. There are still duties ahead, still brief awakenings to come. Not now, not yet, but that thin awareness is already prepared. And when the time comes, when this quiet reaches another threshold, you will not jump awake. You will simply step slightly out of the warmth, do what needs to be done, and then return. But that is the next story. For now, within this unfinished sleep, you are allowed to remain a little longer. There is a very gentle moment when you leave the warmth, not by jumping up, not by fully waking, just the body realizing that it is your turn. The wool blanket is pushed aside slightly. The animal hide opens a narrow gap just wide enough for cold air to slip in. Immediately the cold becomes clearer again. Not violent, not surprising, just very real. It touches your face, your wrists, the part of your neck that has been warm for a long time. Your body responds slowly. No flinch, no shrinking away, just a deeper breath enough to adapt again. You sit up, slowly, very slowly. The space around you remains dark, remains quiet. The sound of the herd is still steady. That tells you nothing is urgent. You stand. When your feet meet the ground, the cold rising from the earth feels sharper than when you were lying down. There is no blanket now, no insulating layer, only your body and the night. In this moment, fatigue becomes very clear. Not the fatigue of heavy labor, but deep fatigue. The weariness of a long day and an incomplete night. Your shoulders sag slightly. Your back is no longer as straight as it was during the day, but you do not stop. Night watch is not a heroic act. It is a familiar duty. No reminder needed, no thought required. You walk, not fast, not slow, just enough to stay warm and stay awake. The wind brushes past, not strong, but enough to remind you that beyond the blanket the night is always present. You pull your coat a little closer. Not to defeat the cold completely, just to lessen it. The cold does not need to be conquered. It only needs to be managed. The herd stands ahead. Large shapes still in the darkness. You do not need to count them. You do not need to see them clearly. Your ears are enough to know that everything is fine. Steady breathing, very slight movement, no running, no collisions. You walk along the edge of the herd, not to control, just to be present. That presence matters more than any action. The cattle are used to having a person nearby. They do not see clearly, but they feel it. Just like you. You do not look at the night. You sense it. Each step presses into cold ground, then lifts away. No hurried rhythm, no distant goal. Just walking, in order to remain. Fatigue at this point is no longer a feeling. It is a state. You do not need to think that you are tired. Your body knows, and it continues because it is accustomed to doing so. Night watch is not a moment of tension. It is a stretch of gentle endurance. No climax, no drama, just steadiness, as the body does what needs to be done, even when energy is low. You pause for a moment, not exactly stopping, just standing still, listening. Nothing has changed. That is good news. You do not need to be here long. You do not need to prove anything, just enough. On nights like this, a cowboy does not think about tomorrow, does not think about the next stretch of trail. That kind of thinking is too far away. Night watch narrows the world down to a few steps and a handful of familiar sounds. Time moves differently here. There is no clock hand, no marker, only the sense of when it is enough to return. You turn back. Each step home is not a release but a continuation. The cold stays with you, but it is no longer unfamiliar. Your body has learned how to move between warmth and cold. This transition no longer shocks. It is a sign of deeper adaptation. You look toward the sleeping place. You cannot see it clearly, but you know it is there. No light needed. No marker required. Only the memory held in the body. When you bend down, when your hand touches the wool blanket again, warmth does not rush back immediately, but reassurance does. You pull the blanket up. The animal hide settles over you again. Your body recognizes the difference at once. Not because it is much warmer, but because it is familiar. That familiarity reaches deeper than temperature. It tells the nervous system you have returned to safety. Fatigue no longer needs to be fixed. It is accepted. The body does not need to stay alert anymore. Night watch is finished. There is no pat on the shoulder, no praise, only the quiet return to the same lying position as before. Your breathing does not need to find its rhythm again. It returns on its own, slow, even. Deep fatigue does not pull you downward. It holds you in the half-awake, half-dreaming state you already know. And in that state the body does not resist. It lets itself drift again with the rhythm of the night. There is no climax, no clear ending. Only a very ancient loop leaving the warmth. doing what must be done, then returning. That loop has existed across generations. Not written down, not celebrated, but it keeps the night safe as it passes. And as you lie back down, as wool and hide settle into place, as your body grows tired enough to stop holding itself awake, another kind of movement begins. Not standing, not walking, but a very slow step taken inside the night itself. A step that needs no legs. A step that requires no open eyes. That step will carry you out of duty and into something else. A state where nothing is done anymore. Where you only listen, only exist, only move alongside cold and stillness. After leaving your sleeping place for night watch, after returning and allowing warmth to wrap around your body once more, a very particular stretch of time opens up. It is not duty, not quite rest. It is simply walking. You rise again, but this time not because anything urgent needs to be done, only because the body wants slow movement, a way to rejoin the rhythm of the night. The first step onto the ground feels lighter than before. There is no longer the jolt of newly touched cold, only the familiar sensation of hard, cold earth, already accepted by the body. You walk slowly, not to guard, not to check, just walking between cold and stillness. Each step meets the ground, then lifts away, following the same quiet rhythm. There is no counting, no conscious pacing. The body has already found the speed that is just warm enough and just calm enough. The wind passes by, not strong, only enough for you to feel cold air sliding across the surface of your skin. You do not avoid it. You do not pull your coat tighter. The wind moves through as part of the night. The ground beneath your feet says nothing, but you hear its firmness with every step you place. It is not soft, not forgiving. It is there as it has been through many winters before you arrived. Far off, the herd continues to breathe. Without looking, you know that rhythm has not changed. Not faster, not hurried, just steady. That sound does not pull you toward it. It simply confirms that the world around you remains calm. You keep walking. Not in a straight line, not in any clear circle, just a few steps back and forth within a small, familiar space. Each step becomes a walking meditation. There are no questions, no answers, only movement and stillness. When you stop, you hear more clearly. Wind above, earth below, cattle in between, each with its own rhythm. No overlap, no conflict. Your body stands among those rhythms as a very small point, and in that moment you clearly feel your own smallness, not as weakness, but as correct placement. You do not need to be large. You do not need to stand out. The night does not ask for that. It only asks that you be in the right place, at the right pace. This sense of smallness does not cause worry. Instead, it lightens you. When you no longer have to carry roles or expectations, the body releases naturally. You are not controlling the night. You are a small part moving alongside it. People before you walked this way, leaving no trace, writing nothing down. Only slow footsteps in darkness across many generations. Cowboys did not think about history, but history is there, in how they walked in, how they stopped in, how they listened. You hear the soft brush of fabric against the wind, the sound of your own breath moving in and out, not deeper, not shallower, just even. This is not wakefulness, and it is not sleep. It is a state in between, where the body moves but the mind settles. A form of meditation that requires no sitting still. Each step dissolves thought a little more, not by pushing it away, but by leaving it nowhere to hold. You do not think about yesterday. You do not think about tomorrow. Those ideas are too distant for the rhythm of the present step. Here there is only earth, wind, breath, and you among them. When you stand still a little longer, the cold becomes more noticeable, but not uncomfortable. It only reminds you that you are outdoors. Your body does not react strongly. It does not shiver. It has grown accustomed. This familiarity does not come from reason. It comes from remaining in the cold long enough without resisting it. Walking between cold and stillness is not a test. It is a transition, from action into rest, from duty into release. You take a few more steps, then stop. There is no decision. It is simply time. You turn back toward the sleeping place without hurry. Each step back is lighter than the one before. Your body has released its excess energy. Deep fatigue no longer weighs down. It becomes an invisible blanket spreading from within. When you bend down, when your hand touches the wool blanket again, familiarity appears instantly. Not warmth, but safety. You do not need to walk anymore. The walking meditation is complete. There is no clear ending, no closing moment, only the body knowing that it has moved enough to lie still. As you return to the same position as the saddle lifts your neck again, as wool and hide settle over you, the night seems to close in, not completely, just a little closer. Walking between cold and stillness has done its work. It has removed the final excess of alertness. It has given back a deeper breath. And within that breath, as the body has tired enough, as the mind has quieted enough, there is nothing left to do. You only lie back and let the night continue in its own way. Soon, not yet, you will return fully to warmth without needing to rise again. No more steps, no more listening, only a very slow drifting into a deeper field of quiet. After those very slow steps between cold and stillness, you return. There is no hurry, no need to look. Your body remembers the way. The sleeping place is not a point on a map, but a feeling. The feeling of warmth that has already been made, already held, and is waiting for you. When you bend down, when your hand touches the edge of the wool blanket, familiarity appears before warmth has time to arrive. Not warmth yet, just the sense of being in the right place. You pull the blanket up. The animal hide settles over you again, like a door closing very softly behind your back. The cold stays outside. It is not chased away, only placed beyond a boundary. The moment your body touches the bedroll again, something very clear happens. Everything lets go quickly. No instruction needed. No reminder required. Your shoulders drop. Your back finds its familiar curve. Your neck settles into the saddle as if it never left. The body recognizes the safe zone and stops being alert. This is an ancient reflex, not a modern habit. You no longer need to prepare for sleep. No deep breathing. No arranging of thoughts. Everything has already been done before you returned. Warmth begins to gather again faster than the first time. Not because the blankets are better, but because the body has learned how to hold heat. The minutes spent stepping back into the cold did not take safety away. They made safety clearer. As you lie still, warmth returns like water finding its old basin. No rush, no sound, just filling the spaces it already knows. Deep fatigue no longer stands at the doorway. It steps inside, not with weight, not with pressure. It simply rests a hand on your shoulder and says, "This is enough." You do not need to try to sleep. You do not need to defeat the cold. You do not need to conquer the night. The body has done everything it needed to do. This is very different from the way we sleep in the modern world. Here, sleep is not a goal. It is a result, the result of going out and returning, of cold and warmth, of movement and stillness. As you lie back, the sound of the herd moves farther away in your attention, not because it has grown quieter, but because it is no longer needed. Your ears remain open, but they are not waiting. All important signals have already been confirmed. The night is steady. The herd is calm. Nothing more is required. The wool blanket rests evenly across your chest, its weight just enough for the nervous system to understand that you are being held. The animal hide blocks the wind, not with force but with patience. The saddle supports your neck, not for comfort but for correct alignment. Each thing does one job. No overlap, no excess. This arrangement does not need to be thought about. The body recognizes it the way it recognizes an old language. Inside this safe zone, time slows another step. There is no longer a moment ago or in a moment. There is only now, stretched gently. You are no longer tracking your breath. It finds its own rhythm, not deeper, not shallower, just steady and enough. This familiar safety does not make you suddenly sleepy. It makes you stop needing to do anything. Stop holding. Stop watching. Stop waiting. The body releases the last muscles it kept engaged while you were outside. Your jaw softens. Your brow smooths. If thoughts appear, they have no weight. Not clear enough to hold on to. Not bright enough to carry you away. They drift past like thin mist, dissolving before taking shape. You do not need to push them away. You do not need to follow them. Safety is already doing that for you. In this state, you are no longer returning. You are staying. Staying with warmth. Staying with weight. Staying with the quiet that was built through many small steps earlier. Returning to the bedroll is not the end of an action. It is the opening of a calm space where no further action is required. You do not need to try anymore. No need to stay awake. No need to fall asleep. You only need to lie still and let the night do its work. If a distant sound appears, your ears will recognize it without waking you. If nothing changes, the body will continue drifting like a boat already tied to its anchor. This safe zone is not made of high walls or locked doors. It is familiarity repeated long enough to become trust. Trust that you have done enough for this night. Trust that no more effort is needed. And when that trust settles, something very natural happens. Alertness withdraws without being invited. There is no sound of a door closing, no clear signal, only the pauses between breaths growing slightly longer. You do not need to notice. You do not need to remember. The safe zone has completed its work. Now the night can close in its own way. Not with a sharp ending, but by slowly dissolving into stillness. And when everything is quiet enough, when warmth is steady, when the body is no longer holding onto any thread, you do not need to return again. No more going out, no more coming back, only remaining still and letting what remains pass by very gently. At this moment there is nothing left that needs to be done. No need to add more warmth, no need to check the night, no need to listen more deeply. Everything is already where it belongs. The cold is still there. It has not disappeared, but it is no longer something you must face. You do not defeat the cold. You live alongside it. The difference is subtle, but enough for the body to stop tightening. When there is no longer resistance, energy is no longer wasted. The cold becomes of the setting, like the night sky, like the ground beneath you. Not good, not bad, simply present. The warmth inside the wool blankets does not need to grow thicker. It is enough, not enough to erase the night, but enough to remain within it without feeling lost. You no longer distinguish where the body ends, where the blankets begin, where the surrounding air exists. All boundaries soften. The sharp sensations from earlier in the night have rounded out, losing their edges. Breathing no longer needs attention. It flows on its own. In, out. Between breaths there are very small pauses you do not need to count. Those pauses lengthen without anyone pulling them. Sleep does not arrive like a door slamming shut. It arrives like mist, slowly, without announcement. You do not step into sleep. Sleep spreads outward and surrounds you. In this state, awareness does not vanish. It simply fades like a fire allowed to burn down. Not fully extinguished, just retreating so it no longer shines brightly. If a thought passes through, it carries no question. No answer is required. No continuation. It drifts and dissolves the moment it appears. Acceptance is not a decision. It is the result of having nothing left to decide. You do not need to choose between sleeping and waking. The body made that choice long ago. Here there is no moment of ending, no marker to say the night is over. The night does not need to end. It simply closes in the gentlest way. The sound of the herd is no longer in the foreground, but it does not disappear. It becomes background, a thin layer of sound that keeps the world steady. The wind continues to move, but you do not follow it. The ground remains cold, but you do not touch it. All of these things continue to exist without you. And that is what quiet truly is. When you no longer have to dissipate, you are allowed to dissolve. To dissolve is not to vanish. It is to blend into a shared rhythm. People before you dissolved into the night like this. No explanations needed, no memories required. Just of a long chain of ordinary nights that passed. Cowboys did not think about the meaning of sleep. They did not question acceptance. But their bodies understood that not everything needs to be controlled. Some things only need to be left alone. Sleep arrives not because you are exhausted to the point of collapse, but because you are no longer holding yourself awake. That is the subtle difference. Holding is an action. Releasing is allowing things to return to their natural rhythm. You release without doing anything. You release thoughts. You release roles. You even release the idea that you are listening to a story. The story no longer needs you. It continues to flow, even when you are not following it. That is how this story has been told from the beginning. Not to reach a conclusion, but to create a current you can step out of at any moment. The night does not ask whether you are asleep. It does not need confirmation. It simply continues to cover everything with the same patience. Within that covering, small differences no longer matter. Today or yesterday. Colder or warmer. Awake or asleep. All of it softens and blends together. If there is a moment when you still recognize that you are here, that moment does not last. It dissolves like a ripple across dark water. You do not need to hold on. You do not need to release further. The body has done its work. The night has as well. Acceptance carries no grand message. It does not teach. It does not ask to be remembered. It simply exists as a way of living that has been tested through many winters. Living with the cold, living with the night, living with limits without needing to overcome them. In that place, sleep is not a reward. It is what naturally happens when resistance ends. You do not need to sleep deeply. You do not need to sleep long. You only need to sleep in the way the night allows. And the night allows more than you think. When everything is quiet enough, when warmth is steady, when no movement is required, alertness withdraws without leaving a trace. There is no goodbye, no ending. This story does not close. It simply grows more distant in your attention, like starlight when your eyes have already closed. The night is still there. The cold is still there. The world continues, but you do not need to go with it anymore. You have walked enough, listened enough, stayed enough. Now, you may let your eyes grow heavy, not because you are tired, but because there is no longer any reason to keep them open. Breath continues without your supervision, and within that breathing, as everything blends together, the night closes in the quietest way possible. Not ending, just becoming still, and you are allowed to remain within that stillness for as long as you wish. Based on the entire story, how did cowboys sleep during brutal cold in the Wild West and more? Relaxing history. The greatest message does not lie in the harshness of the cold, nor in extraordinary survival skills. What remains in the end is something very simple. Human beings do not live better by fighting their circumstances, but by learning how to live alongside them. Cowboys of the past did not try to defeat the cold night. They did not aim for perfect comfort, nor did they expect a full, uninterrupted sleep like the one we seek indoors today. Instead, they accepted reality, sleeping half awake and half dreaming, taking turns on night watch, stepping out into the cold and then returning to warmth, moving between discomfort and rest. It was this acceptance that allowed their bodies to adapt, their minds to settle, and the night to pass safely. In modern life, we often do the opposite. When we are tired, we try to sleep deeper. When we are anxious, we try to control more. When we feel uneasy, we search for more solutions. But this story gently reminds us of another path. A softer one, letting go of resistance. Not every problem needs to be solved immediately. Not every night needs to be perfect. Sometimes being safe enough, familiar enough, and quiet enough is all it takes, and rest along with calm will arrive on its own. The story of the cowboy does not teach us to be stronger. It teaches us to be kinder to ourselves, to slow our rhythm, to accept our limits, to trust that the body and time know how to adjust if we give them the space to do so. Thank you for spending this time listening and walking alongside this story. If you feel even a little more peaceful before sleep, please like and share to spread this quiet calm, and subscribe to continue slowing down with us through gentle historical stories made for rest.